Today we're talking bass lines, and don't worry, you don't need a real bass to play a bass line. There's plenty of ways. Like, for example, using a synthesizer, having a very plucky bass line, or using a synthesizer to have a very subtle bass line. You can also use toms, you can use kicks, whatever it is. In this video, I'm gonna show you the top 5 melodic techno bass lines. So what comes into your mind when you think of melodic techno bass lines? For me personally, it was not even a bass line with a synthesizer like you would maybe imagine, because when I remember back to, let's say, some Afterlife tracks from a few years ago, like not that many, maybe 3 or 4 years, I remember a lot of tracks that didn't have a bass line at all, but rather just had a nice tom groove. And it's always a very, very unique style of having a tom like this, because you could always recognize that it's in this style. And so this is the first one that we want to have a look at here. And what's really interesting about this is that you don't need all that much in your low end to already make it sound very big and also apply a lot of groove. Let me play it for you first. So what we have here is just some toms. Some are longer, like this one. They have a bit more space. They can like have their full bass information. Some are a little bit shorter. Some are a little bit quieter. So they're just there to, let's say, they're like a ghost note. Maybe you know this from drumming, like very quiet notes that fill up some space. And then there are some that are like really setting an accent, like this one, and this one. And some that are like an in-between thing. And so what I can say about this in just a few words is what you really have to be aware of, that there's essentially a difference between having a note on the like kick or offbeat and having a note on those two 16th, which are in between. So those are kind of the weak beats, while those are the strong beats. And especially the kick one is obviously the strong beat, but this one we don't want to use because we already have our kick drum there, so it doesn't make sense to put a tom on top of this. It would only like kill the transient and mud up the low end, so it doesn't really make sense. So essentially we have those three options of having the second 16th or the fourth, which both are a little weaker, or we have the offbeat one, which is a little stronger. And we can really play with that. So if you have a look at my pattern, then you can see that there's first the weaker ones, the stronger ones, weaker ones, stronger ones, right? And then there's also a difference between this one and that one, in a sense that this one is so close to the kick that it has this kind of a little bit of an echo feeling. Right, you can also hear this on this point very good, while this one is very far away from the kick but connects very well to the next kick. So they are always a good combination, like this or like this, both works. And there's always this very good combination like this, which I've used in the second part of this rhythm, which has this kind of Latino feeling. So there's a lot of grooves that you can come up that revolve around those three options, and which one is strong and which one is weak and which one maybe has less velocity or more. And the possibilities are almost endless. You could already also start maybe pitching some of the toms. That's crazy, right? This also sounds very cool. Maybe if we put it in here. Right, so there's many possibilities, and you should definitely try this out if you haven't yet. So the next one is the subtle roll. I want to play it for you, and you will definitely notice it. So the subtle roll as the name already says, is rolling notes like this, 16th notes of a very subtle bass sound. It's made with a sine wave that is banded, so it's not as harsh as a saw wave, but still has some higher frequencies. So the difference actually is huge if I take the bend away. But there's also a huge difference compared to this, which already sounds a little bit harsher even though the filter is closed. So this is one way to do it, and it's used in a lot of tracks, especially nowadays. It's very easy because in one way it's subtle, it doesn't take away a lot of space. You can even have some big synthesizers on top of it, and a lot of percussions, right? So there's not that much frequency area taken away, but at the same time it's very strong, fills up the low end very well, feels very warm also because it doesn't have too much higher frequencies, so is always a good one to start with. So the next one is a little bit harder to use, I would say. One track that made it perfectly right now is Explore Your Future. Is it Your Future or The Future? I think Your Future by Anima. It's currently on #1 in peak time melodic house and techno. It's currently #1 at melodic house and techno on Beatport, and it has a bass line in somewhat similar style like this one. So what's the difference to the subtle roll? Obviously, it's not that subtle. So it has a very, very harsh sound, very plucky. We have the same kind of bended sine wave to start with, right? But we combine it with a FM, so frequency modulated saw wave, which gives a lot of harsh frequencies on top. And then we take some of them away again with the filter. And we only let them come through very briefly with the envelope 2 to create this very strong pluck. And the second difference though is that it's not rolling like this, which would also work maybe, but the way I intended this to be and the way it's, for example, used in the Anima track Explore Your Future is like a strong offbeat bass. So it doesn't happen on this note, nor on this note, of course, only on the offbeat, right? So the most easy form would be like this. Yeah, sounds a little bit too trancy, maybe a little bit too weak. It's also nice to have those plucky transient coming one after each other, so it's nice to go with the 16th note here. And of course, the difficulties here is that you have a lot of high frequencies already, so you kind of need to make space for that. Or if you don't, your bass line doesn't sound that good anymore and will mask other stuff. So it's not easy to work with this, but have a listen to the Anima track to get some inspiration and maybe try it out for yourself. So the next one is the moving rhythm, and by the way, you can see those MIDI files here. Those are like kind of templates that you can use, groove templates, because you can adjust the notes in pitch, right? But there's different grooves in here that you can use for your productions, for your bass lines, so make sure to download them for free in the description. And let's start with the first moving rhythm. We already talked about the weak beats and the stronger beat and the offbeat, right? So this is nothing new to you guys, but this time it's the almost analog bass. And yeah, so this time we use a kind of similar concept like the toms, but more in a looped style. So this is looped over and over, so it feels a little faster in a way, not as steady as the toms. And at the same time, with the saw synth, very analog feeling, we get a little bit more power, and it kind of fits the modern vibe that we have right now in melodic techno a bit more. And there's different patterns here. I want to click through them very fast. So they're all taken from big and famous melodic techno productions, like this one, for example, from Anima Eternity, who's just breaking the rules of not using the note on the kick drum. If somebody can, then it's him. And it works fine if you use the sidechain correctly. So this is the moving rhythm, essentially having those rhythms, but with a lot of space in between as well, with a synthesizer, and there's tons of options, and you can get some of them to try them out. So the last one is the rolling jumps, one of my personal favorites, also because I make techno myself and it gives me more of a techno vibe because it's more like steady and fills up more space in the low end. So a sound that we used here is basically saw waves. One is wider and therefore creates a little bit of stereo information as well. So in situations like this, you really have to make sure in your mix that you have something like this, like a side EQ that's taking away the low end. This is not a mixing video, so I'm not going to emphasize too much about this. I just wanted to mention it because it's very important. Now let's have a listen to the rolling jumps. So you can already hear what's characterizing the rolling jumps. It is two things. First of all, it's rolling. So like the subtle roll, every note except for the kick 16th is occupied by one bassline note. And then also the second characteristic of this bassline is that there's notes on different octaves, right? So if we put it all on the same octave, what does it sound like? Basically like the subtle roll with just a little bit more cutoff. But if we have different octaves, we get this nice up and down movement, and this is emphasized in a lot of tracks. Dreamcaster by Mind Against on Afterlife, many others. I'm sure you have a lot of examples in your mind already, and let me know in the comments which bass lines do you hear in which track, and also maybe which bass lines have I forgotten about, which one should be added to this video, which archetype of bass line is also important. So what can I say about the rolling jumps? Essentially, you have to make sure that there's some sort of rhythm as well. So once again, we have strong beats and weak beats here with the offbeat and the 16th in between. And now we use the +1 octave. So this is the 0 octave kind of, and this is the +1, so 1 octave higher. And we use those notes to emphasize the rhythm, while those notes are kind of adding the low information. And actually you can see that if you move this just a little bit like this, you can see they are actually kind of playing the same, but just moved a little bit. And then depending on where you want to go in your track, you can use it in different ways. Like here, for example, it was very low and only with accents, having a little bit of a note shift in the end. Here, it's a lot of high notes, a lot of low notes, accents as well, the +2, the +3, the -2, so a little bit of melodic movement in there as well. And here we have like just a nice switch of different rhythms. And in that last one, we have this nice little roll in the end, which you can really do the way you want to, like with all the notes that you have available that fit your track maybe, and you can see rolling jumps already offer endless possibilities. There's some things that you should have in mind, the characteristics I spoke about, but at the same time there's endless ways to utilize it. So if this was helpful for you, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel to help us make more videos like this in the future. So until then, have a good time and keep making music.